Small town Colorado, seizing an opportunity presented by the pandemic. A park so many know, yet few could properly name, is likely to get a new name. Signature gatherers are back. There are stores that say we don't want them around, so why allow it? A minister gets sued by his neighbors over his plan to help people who are homeless. And we learn about a word that we won't be saying around here anymore. That's next. We've talked a lot about what the pandemic stole from local businesses. In parts of rural Colorado, some entrepreneurs saw things a bit differently. They saw opportunity. Anusha Roy takes us clear out to Dolores in southwest Colorado.
It's our little town of Dolores. It's our biggest sign.
Roughly 800 people live here.
Heading all the way up to Telluride.
Elizabeth Philbrick moved from Fort Collins because this is where she wanted to co-found and launch Esoterra Cider to take advantage of the apple orchards. Yes, it's a familiar story, a new business trying to survive a pandemic. But consider this.
People who have really amazing jobs no longer have to be in downtown Denver and spend every weekend driving to the mountains. They can now live in the mountains.
So in Dolores' tight-knit community,
They're some of the greatest people in the neighborhood.
Elizabeth started noticing some changes.
There's now this influx of people who want services that they got in downtown Front Range, but maybe they don't exist out here.
Brand new food truck that has opened, specializing in healthy, hearty foods.
But new opportunity doesn't mean older obstacles disappear.
Rural, you are running over miles to reach your numbers.
Delaney Keating is the executive director of Startup Colorado, hosted at CU School of Law Silicon Flatiron Center. She realized there wasn't a good network across the state to help rural businesses.
It's that the resources aren't threaded together.
The online network launched 5.5 months ago with more than 500 users and a larger network of help so far. And Elizabeth tapped into this help.
We noticed that you need a little bit of marketing help. We noticed that you need a little advertising help.
It also helped rural businesses connect with funding when the pandemic derailed their plans and took giant bites out of budgets.
Rural America has been the backbone of a lot of really interesting innovation throughout time. And it would be a shame for any of that to come to a halt because all of resources are condensed into a handful of very small places.
So it's really interesting to just think about how people were moving around during the pandemic, right? Today we heard about people both leaving rural areas, going towards bigger cities, and then of course vice versa, right? Leaving the urban area of Colorado. And so it is interesting because the state is going to be keeping an eye on this. They said anecdotally they've been hearing the same kind of thing, and that includes people moving to different cities for maybe a couple of weeks because they're working remotely and they have that flexibility. And Kyle, they actually are getting data, firm data on how many people have been moving around like this. That information is still just coming in, so they're still sorting through it before they can share it with us.
And Anusha, when we talk about rural Colorado, we're talking about, physically speaking, most of the state.
Yeah, so the state broke it down for us. So out of the 64 counties, you have 47 that are considered strictly non-metro, another 5 that you could say is kind of on the fence, but a lot of people consider it more rural than urban, right? So we're talking a majority of the counties in the state. And unfortunately, those same industries that we saw got majorly hit in our bigger cities. That same kind of trend also played out in rural Colorado, which gave that whole new network a new sense of urgency to launch.
Sure, often without the diversification of industry in the rural areas, so just one business can make a huge void. All right, Anusha, thank you so much. 35% of our state's population right now has completed the vaccination process, making progress. More than 2 million people. 613,000 of our neighbors are waiting on their second dose. We cannot shake the high hospitalization number, 667 patients right now. It's up 6 from the day before. This time last week, it was 617 patients being treated for the most serious cases of COVID in our hospitals. We are getting some feedback about the casual use of a word that you hear all the time has a real history. A viewer, Jennifer, emailed after our story last month about Colorado's large capacity ammunition magazine ban. It became law in 2013 and it had exceptions for gun owners who had previously owned those magazines. What word would you use for that? We referred to them as being grandfathered in. Our Marshall Zellinger explains why he's not going to use that word anymore.
A word used to describe exemptions to new rules is so common, I used it back on April 22nd. Or the magazines could have been sold prior to 2013, thus grandfathered into the law.
The term grandfathered in was originally used to implement voter suppression.
MSU Denver Associate Professor Rose Marie Allen helped me understand the term came from a time when African Americans should have been able to vote, but states were implementing rules to keep that from happening, like literacy tests and poll taxes. Grandfathering gave the right to vote without a literacy test or paying a tax to a person whose grandfather was eligible to vote.
Rules like grandfathering in provided an exception even for whites who may not be able to qualify.
State lawmakers recently introduced an election reform bill that would ban drop boxes at police stations, except Denver's most popular drop box is at a police station and would stay. In an email, Alton Dillard, the communications manager for Denver elections, said they worked to make sure there was grandfather language.
I like to fancy myself somewhat of a wordsmith. I had to find myself checking myself when you're doing the research for your story, because it's a term that, I had been casually using in a legislative sense.
Dillard is not representing Denver elections in this story. He's simply a Denver resident of more than 50 years who understands words with deeper meaning.
Things like the use of terms like plantation shutters. That's what they're called, but it makes the hair stand up on my neck a little bit.
Terms like the master bedroom or the king size bed, that's really focused on the wealthy, more affluent class. And when you talk about master bedrooms, you're talking about the bedroom of the master that has its roots in enslavement.
I know at least one person will respond and tell me, well, it's just a word. But there may be a word out there that directly impacts you.
We say things like, I had to Jew them down, which is anti-Semitic. We say I was gypped. We say things like the paddy wagon. We have to be mindful that these terms are rooted in racism.
Here are two new words, space and grace. Rose Marie Allen says we need to allow space and grace to grow. Once you learn better, do better. So Kyle, I've learned better, and now I will do better.
I learned this from your learnings on this. And it strikes me, Marshall, that when you are presented with this information, you can react one of two ways. You can either be defensive and angry about it, or you can just say, oh, well, that's good to know. Thank you for telling me there's other words I could use.
That's exactly what I heard from both the people that I interviewed today. And Rose Marie Allen said, don't be defensive, just stop, perhaps apologize if needed, and don't use it again.
Yep, and my guess is it'll probably come out of my mouth again, but I can almost guarantee you I will go, oh, I'm not going to say that again. And I bet you I'll remember the time after that. Thank you, Marshall. It's really interesting. So that poor little strip of park right across the street from the state capitol, everybody just kind of assumes is part of Civic Center Park, the much larger park next door. It's not, but the little park is getting a new name, so maybe people will remember it now. The park is officially known as Lincoln Park. It sits between Broadway and Lincoln. But if you ask Google Maps and most people around town, they either say it's Civic Center Park or Liberty Park, that little strip there. A bill just passed through committee at the state legislature, which would rename the park Colorado Veterans Park. Name change comes with a proposal for a new statue there and a plaque honoring Major General Maurice Rose. General Rose was quite prominent in Denver's Jewish community. He was the highest-ranking U.S. serviceman killed by enemy fire in Europe in World War II. The committee that oversees the Capitol grounds approved placing this new statue. They did discuss the vandalism of statues around the Capitol. Last year, there was that Civil War statue that was toppled during the protests, and it has not been placed back up in front of the Capitol. The full legislature is going to vote on this park renaming next. A word of thanks from me to you tonight for raising $27,000 in a couple of days to feed families across Colorado. Your microgiving campaign this week is specifically supporting the Culturally Responsive Foods Initiative at Food Bank of the Rockies. That is a whole lot of words for what is a very simple idea, that food banks should have the foods that people want to eat, the foods that they want to prepare with their children, the foods that are steeped in memory and tradition. So Food Bank of the Rockies works with a variety of communities, Latino, Ethiopian, Russian, Vietnamese, and others, to identify what are the foods that they wish they could more easily find here and then that food bank program goes out and spends a little bit more to make sure that those foods are available to people. This means so much to folks, to see and to be able to receive the food that they know and love, that we hear stories about families breaking down in tears. So $5 at a time. A whole bunch of Next viewers have come up with $27,000 for this cause. If you want to join me in donating, text THANKS to 303-871-1491. I'll send you that link. Think about it. What a beautiful gift to not just be able to put food on somebody's table, but to offer the foods that they know, that they love, that they long for. Thanks for your help. Neighbors sue a pastor to keep him from opening his church property to people who are homeless. And some wise words this Friday.
Realize that your mother's one of the most important pieces of your life. And don't take it for granted.
Your good news this week is a beautiful tribute to all the good our mothers have done. Next. I don't know how anyone could have predicted that a pastor would have wanted to open up his church property to help people who are homeless. Yes, I guess there are some clues in the Bible, but they're like way towards the back of the book. The pastor trying to open up a church parking lot to provide a place for people to stay is now being sued by his neighbors in Park Hill. They want a restraining order to stop a city-sanctioned campsite from popping up at Park Hill United Methodist Church. 5 people from the neighborhood filed that lawsuit against the church, against Pastor Nathan Adams, against the nonprofit Colorado Village Collaborative, as well as against the city of Denver. The plan is for the current site at Denver Community Church's Uptown location to be taken down and moved to Park Hill next month. The site would be run by the nonprofit there on the church's land. This lawsuit claims that the campsite would be a danger to kids who attend preschool camp and daycare there at the church. And they argue that neighbors did not get a chance to weigh in on this before the campsite was approved. Colorado Village Collaborative released a statement in response today saying in part, when given the option, time and again, some groups of powerful individuals seek to choose their neighbors along lines such as class, race, religion, sexual orientation, and other forms of oppression. When the arc of justice has prevailed in these historic examples, a clear and simple truth has been revealed, they wrote, no one gets to choose who lives next door. The calendar may say spring, and the weather forecast may still think that next week is winter, but you know what time it is. It's signature season. They're all over you. The signature gatherers are out and about. We saw them at the King Soopers at Hamden and Monaco. They were passing around petitions to overturn Denver's new rule that allows more unrelated people to live together. That's made way for residential care facilities and halfway houses in more neighborhoods. The group that opposes those changes wants Denver voters to overturn it at the ballot. First, they need to collect signatures, nearly 9,200 voter signatures. So they're doing it there at King Soopers, among other places. You see the sign that says the petitioners are there without the company's permission. We asked King Soopers about that sign. A spokeswoman told us that customers have reported feeling threatened by the signature gatherers. All right, so tell them to leave. It's your property, right? Well, that could get sticky legally because you and I both know that King Soopers allows other solicitors to be on their property, say those adorable Girl Scouts selling cookies.
Mostly sunny and 85 degrees in Denver today, and now the clouds are rolling in and we're tracking a couple of high base thunderstorms and a cooler day tomorrow. Matter of fact, this front coming through will trigger some thunderstorms as early as 1 o'clock tomorrow, and as they move out onto the eastern plains in the afternoon, they'll become a bit stronger. Maybe that rain mixing with snow up over the higher terrain, but that's not the storm that's got the real cold air. That's coming early next week. Partly cloudy 50 tonight, partly sunny 68 on Saturday with afternoon thunder showers. Sunday, good chance of rain from storms, but Monday's the heavy rain and cold enough that we'll see snow by Tuesday morning.
Let's hear it for our original cheerleaders, our inspiration, our motivation.
My mom is the one that takes care of me, and she's the one that gives me birth, and she's the one that really cares about me. Like, she's in my heart.
For the moms we love, the moms we've lost. Let's take a moment.
The love that she gave to me and still gives to me and gives to my children now.
A moment for Mom. Next. It's Friday, and every Friday for the last 247 Fridays, we have shared a bit of your good news. And for the 248th edition, your good news is all about Mom.
Mothers are a symbol of love. The memories that my mom left me, the legacies that she left us, was how great love is and how together a family should be.
All right, let's talk about moms.
My mom. I love my mom. She gives me a lot of stuff, you know? And I just love her.
What I remember about her the most is her cooking. I love her cooking, her the love that she always gave out, you know, it was always to me or my brothers, sisters, my siblings.
It's like a protection love and a selfless, careless love that you will always give to them before yourself.
It's an important subject. My mom passed away in 2013, and every Mother's Day, it becomes reality to me. Take pride in your mom. You have her once, and there's only one life. So, let's be grateful.
She sacrifices through thick and thin to get what I need to do.
Not gonna lie, I had a rough time with my mom when I was, younger. She's always there. She never gave up.
I just would love to thank my mom. She is the best woman I have ever met.
My mom is the one that takes care of me. And she's the one that gave me birth, and she's the one that really cares about me, like she's in my heart.
That was beautiful. We appreciate people sharing stories of Mom through the lens of our photojournalist, Tom Cole. So when you map out backup trailheads to hike, if your first one is too crowded, yes, I would say that is the most Colorado thing we saw today. And a question about the word grandfather next. Plans for a weekend hike with layers of contingency plans if the trails are too crowded? Yeah, that would be the most Colorado thing we saw today. Sue and her friends were figuring out their weekend hiking plans. They had their preferred hike, they had a backup, and another, and another. 4 trails in all. Sue admits they're not early risers, and they often find trailhead parking lots full. So they always have layers of backup plans for their hikes. And the absurdity of this exercise made them think of next. We're honored. So send us the absurdly Colorado things you see, or email next@9news.com. You can always get our attention with the hashtag #HeyNext. I love Father Michael Nicosia dropping some knowledge on me for my comment about who could have foreseen the pastor trying to help the homeless. I guess there are clues towards the back of the book. The good father comes in to say, brilliant quip, but inaccurate. Regarding hospitality to the neighbor, that injunction is foundational to the Hebrew and subsequently in Islamic scriptures as well. Point well taken, not just a New Testament lesson. Robin and Dick wrote in asking for alternatives to the word grandfathering. You hear people say legacy or legacy. That seems to work.